All right, and we are live. Welcome, coaches. Thank you for tuning in on this fine Saturday evening. What we're going to do is it's something different, but if you look up any football on YouTube, you will stumble across this man's channel. And let me stop that because it is the man is Brett Kollmann. He breaks down. You do more NFL stuff, but you do touch on college football. And I just reached out, shot my shot. You said yes, so thank you so much for coming on to the showcast, as I call it.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Oh, not what kind? Oh, I thought.
Yeah,
Oh, happy to be here. I thought you said I'm having a beer. I was like, oh, I like
I
that.
mean, I
Oh,
wish I was having a beer. It'd probably be bad because I started my day with margaritas, and going from tequila to beer might be a horrible decision. But I mean,
oh,
I'll never say no.
dang, you are absolutely right. We would not be talking right now if that's what you did. So okay, so what I want to talk about first is I'm as creepy and weird as this is. What's your hit? Like, how did you play football in college and high school? Like, because I mean, your breakdowns are just ESPN or like insider knowledge. And I'm curious what your background.
Yeah, unfortunately, a back injury kind of took playing away from me while I was in high school, early in high school, actually. Ironically, not even while playing football, I was playing hockey because
Oh
I played a
wow.
whole bunch of sports growing up. And so I had a hockey injury kind of take that away from me. But I still love the game, and I kind of wanted to just be around the game in any way I could. So I stuck around. I was that kid up in the cherry, in the cherry picker, filming practices and organizing tape for the coaches. And I was in like the TV production program in high school because I was like, okay, well maybe I'll kind of do media stuff. And then I went to film school and ended up working at the NFL Network for 5 years, and kind of took my drive to just kind of still love the game and learn everything I could about the game while I was at NFL Network, which was my dream job at the time before I even ever considered doing YouTube. And I thought I was just going to be at NFL Network forever because that was kind of the end goal. And so I kind of just started doing videos as proof of concepts for my producers while I was at NFL Network. Literally the same thing I do now, except I'd be like, okay, well, I'm a nobody, so why don't I just write the script and organize the clips, and we'll have LaDainian Tomlinson do this one, or Dion do this one, or whoever. And it kind of never really went anywhere for a television format. And so even while kind of doing those videos, not even really for myself, I ended up getting like 11,000 subscribers on YouTube, doing one every like 3 months. And at some point, it got my wife was like, "Okay, well, you're not even trying, and you're building an audience. What happens if you try?" And so I kind of I took all of the knowledge, and keep in mind, I would go into the green room and I would pull up a clip and I would ask Dion, "Is like, hey, when you see this split, what are you thinking? What would you do?" I always like to joke that Dion taught me how to play press coverage, and Michael Irvin taught me how to beat Dion's press coverage. And so I took all of that, and I took me watching tape basically 4 hours a day and having more gigabytes of coaching clinics that I'm willing to admit on my computer. And I kind of just took all that knowledge that I had tried to accumulate over the years and turned it into a YouTube show. And somehow that worked. And 3 years
Yes,
later,
it
here
did.
I am.
Oh man, that is, and it did, and that's crazy how you were just once. So you've defied every. Like I've been looking into how to grow viewers and get popular on YouTube and stuff because I enjoy doing it. And what you did is totally 100% opposite. You're supposed to be consistent, like 2 or 3 times a week. You just did one every 3 months, and you got 11K subscribers.
Yeah, I still don't really know how, but I think it was just people liked it and they subscribed on the hope that I would eventually post another one, and then they would get excited a couple months later when I would, and then I'd go away for a while, and it's somehow they stuck around. I don't really know why, but I'm happy they did.
Because you do in-depth breakdowns and you do something that a lot of people don't. You break it down as if you're talking to a 4 or 5 year old. You show diagrams and you just really get you make the complex simple, and that resonates with a lot of people. So how my question is, how long did that take you football wise to be like, okay, this is what it is. I'm going to simplify it even more and then give it to an audience.
I think a lot of it was, and again, working for the media arm of the league, you kind of get to straddle both worlds of talking to people that really know football, that have been in football for decades. Um, And then also being on the other side of it, where you're talking to football fans that as much as they love the game, a lot of football fans don't really know how football is played, like at a micro level. And kind of seeing how much knowledge an ex-coach or an ex-player had versus how much a fan wants to learn. And I kind of, during my time there, learned how to almost be a translator between those two worlds, because they're two very different worlds. And I think a lot of coaches and players, because they have so much in their head, there's a lot of coaches that have forgotten more about football than I will ever know, but maybe they don't quite know how to translate it for people because they don't know what the fans don't know. And so I think kind of acknowledging that most football fans, while maybe they don't know the game super well, they really want to learn the game super well, and kind of feeding into that craving to learn, and then kind of using language and diagrams and really slowing things down almost frame by frame so that they know what I'm talking about when I use terminology that maybe with other people maybe kind of goes over their head. It's just kind of being realistic of having people that know the game versus people that don't know the game, and how to meet in the middle. And I think that's the hardest balance to strike. And it's also why, I might only break down 2 or 3 plays in like a 20-minute episode, but one of those plays might take 10 minutes to break down because there's a lot of facets to it that some people just didn't know existed.
Yeah, and I mean, I was just watching your latest one again, the Eagles, and you catch things that even as a coach who's been in this for about 11 years, I still don't see. So how long does it take you to make one? Like, how many times are you watching one play over and over and over again before it goes into your video?
Oh, it kind of depends. It kind of depends on if I know what I'm looking for. Sometimes I'll like go through some data for something, and I'll find something that doesn't quite sit well with me, or something that doesn't look right, or some kind of outlier. And then I'll kind of go on a hunt and try to figure out why that is. Or, some episodes I'll be watching something entirely different. And then as I'm kind of charting the plays, I'll notice a pattern and then kind of pull on that thread and go down a rabbit hole. Like the Michael Thomas episode that I did, that was essentially just about shield screens and the concept of shield screens. And that episode started as something totally different. And then as I was watching more Michael Thomas, I noticed like, okay, they run this play a lot, and then it got blown up on one. And I was like, okay, they saw something. And so then I started just kind of going back through the league and watching every team run shield screens. And I kind of did an episode almost about that one concept that started as something entirely different. In terms of how much I watch an individual play, if I don't know what I'm looking for, I might watch it 30, 40 times.
Wow.
Just to get an idea, because I want to know exactly what every single player on the field is doing, what they're thinking, what I think they're thinking before the snap based on the look. And then I'll look at how things change. Maybe there's a safety rotation or whatever. Maybe somebody makes a check. And then I'll kind of put myself in their shoes for what they're thinking before the snap, and then how I would react if I was them, like let's say in a certain split, if I'm a receiver. If I saw a certain rotation, I put myself in their shoes of, okay, how am I adjusting this route against middle field closed versus middle field open? And that will change the context of the play for me, and kind of give me a new perspective of, okay, maybe there wasn't a mistake here. Maybe it was just a miscommunication. And, sometimes it'll take 30 to 40 times watching through a play and getting context for each individual player on offense and defense for me to get the full context of the play and the result, which is part of the reason why I can only do one episode a week, is because watching a single play 30 to 40 times can take quite a while.
You're a freaking investigative reporter for the NFL. That's what you're doing right now.
That's a good way to put it, I guess.
I mean, you are. You're sitting there and you're watching 22 people and trying to piece back what happens. So, okay, let's say, like you said, you go into something looking, okay, I'm gonna do a video on this, but then something tickles the back of your skull. Do you totally just scrape that and then just you rewrite your script right then and there to go and a different direction?
All the time. I mean, I'm trying to think of a recent example. But like there's sometimes when like my videos are 2 or 3 days late, just because I end up switching topics, 2 to 3 days into it that I don't expect to do. Let me go back through the channel. I'm trying to see like what's a good example of one where I just honestly was kind of winging it as I went. Let's see.
All right, and while you're doing that, we have some people in the chat. Joey says he loves you.
Feel free to hit me with some
He
questions.
says he loves you. Locked in Films says, "How's it going, Coach and Brett? That they love your channel. Brett is awesome. His channel and podcast are top tier. If you love football, you love his content." And someone says, "Brett is the GOAT," and I agree, 100%. So you've got fans, man.
Here's a good example.
Yeah,
I don't know if did you watch the one on Kyle Shanahan's run game?
Yes, I did.
I think I posted because again it was late, and I think I posted it like the day of the Super Bowl or something, or maybe the day before the Super Bowl. My voice was totally wrecked because I was sick that week. But like part of the reason why I really wanted to get that one out before the Super Bowl is because I saw a play call that the Packers ran against the Chiefs, and it was a touch pass that was like essentially their way of the floor coach under Shanahan. So like they would use touch passes similar to how Shanahan would, where like they would basically use it as a quicker way to get into their toss scheme or sometimes outside zone. And they ran it against the Chiefs and it worked. I think they ran it at a 2-back if I remember correctly. And I saw that and I immediately thought, okay, they're running that. I was like, I don't know when in this game, but they're running that because it worked, and they need to find a way to get an edge because there's no other way they're going to be able to get to the edge quickly against this defense. They are running that play. And so I basically framed that episode around like, hey, this is the concept that they saw work like 10 weeks ago. The only time that it was ever run against them, they're going to go back to it. And I think literally on the first series, like 5 plays into the game, they ran it. I was dog tired because I barely slept that week. I got the episode out barely on time. And I saw that play and immediately raised my fists in like victory because I was like, I saw it. I knew it was coming. And people that didn't watch the episode that were watching the game with me, and I was like losing my mind. They got like a 20-yard gain or something off of it. And I was losing my mind. I was like, I called it. And they're like, you called a run play? I was like, no, you don't understand. I called that run play against that front. That took a lot of work for me to do.
So I love that. Now, are you able to actually sit down when it's a game and enjoy the game, or when you're watching it live, are you thinking of different things you can talk about next time you film?
The broadcast view is so restrictive. So a lot of the times I just kind of, I watch it to get a general overview of what happened in the game contextually in terms of like, okay, situationally, like how many 3rd and longs were they in? Could they run the ball very well? Were some timeouts being used at questionable times? How was clock management? Did some key injuries happen? Because the broadcast can give you some context that the All-22 cannot, and the All-22 can give you context that the broadcast cannot. So I kind of get that angle of it first. I'll take some notes about situationally some things I want to go and look at later. And like, let's say a team just flat out can't run the ball. I'll make a note of like, hey, 1st and 10, they're getting absolutely bushwhacked. Let's go back when this comes out on Tuesday and Wednesday and see what they were doing. Were they just getting absolutely killed on outside zone? Were they running power into a brick wall? What were they doing? And how was it being stopped? And so I kind of, like I said, sometimes I'll know what I'm looking for when I go into it, and I'll use the broadcast notes to kind of direct that. But there are some weeks where I legitimately don't know what I'm looking for because maybe I didn't see that game. And those are the ones that can take a while when I just see the box score and I'm like, what the hell happened there? Like when a couple of years ago when Buffalo beat the tar off of Minnesota when Josh Allen was a rookie. And I was like, what was going on in that game? Like, that was one where I really had to watch it intensely because I didn't know how the hell Buffalo that year could have beat Minnesota, but they did.
Okay, now are you going through, like you're just watching games and if something jumps out at you, you go, okay, this is the video I'm going to do, or do you have videos already planned like weeks in advance that you do? Like how does that work?
Every year it's kind of the same where I look at the schedule and I kind of had some topics in mind for individual matchups or schematic matchups I want to do. And then the actual games happen and it completely throws it out the window. Every single week, it totally throws it out the window, and it pisses me off, but it makes better shows when I do stuff that's fresh and recent and to a degree unexpected.
Yeah, because then, people are looking for it on YouTube. They find your excellent videos and like, yes, that's exactly. You have an uncanny knack of knowing what everyone is looking for.
Yeah, like and I think that's part of it is in terms of like growing on YouTube. Like there are topics that I know I would love. Like I really want to do a film room on these 3 rookie linebackers for the Bengals that I think are going to end up being a really good linebacking core growing up for them. But,
Why do you think that?
Because I think they all fit together really well with Logan Wilson, Akeem Davis-Gaither, and the Purdue kid, Marcus Bailey. Together with Pratt, who I wasn't as high on when he was coming out, but like I really want to do an episode on these 3 linebackers that honestly 95% of football fans have no idea who they are.
You're absolutely right.
Even some Bengals fans probably don't know who they are if they don't pay that much attention. But I will probably prioritize doing a film room on Tua Tagovailoa instead, because I know that at the end of the day, I still got to pay some bills, and Tua can help pay the bills. And then maybe later in the summer, when I can get into some projects where it doesn't matter what the views are, it's just something for me, that's when I'll look at how Wilson and Davis-Gaither were drafted specifically to stop the Ravens, which they were, and kind of how their skill set translates to the Bengals defense and how they play different roles and stuff like that, which I know is not going to do great numbers. But just from a personal satisfaction standpoint, I would love to do an episode like that.
Yeah, I would like it too. And what it sounds like is kind of like Hollywood superstars. Like, yeah, I'll do one for the studio. In return, I'm going to do one that I want to do.
Exactly.
Yeah, that is awesome. All right, we got a question for you right here. It goes, what do you think of Clyde Edwards going to the Chiefs? What matchups do you think Reed is going to be able to use with him?
God, this guy's just killing me. That was my nightmare scenario.
Wow.
I said multiple times going into the draft, I was like, give me anything but Clyde Edwards-Helaire going to the Chiefs, because he is going to shatter the league in that system. He was tied with Jonathan Taylor for me in terms of running back 1, and it was really system dependent. Jonathan Taylor in a, let's say, Shanahan system where, hey, we're running outside zone all day. Yeah, he's going to be pretty friggin' productive. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire in an Andy Reid system is also going to be outrageously productive. You flip-flop both of them, and they'll both still be good, but maybe not maximized. But Clyde going to the Chiefs, who absolutely will maximize his skill set, makes him, to me, like he's going to be the most dominant rookie offensive player. Not
you think
including
right out the gate?
Oh yeah, I mean even Andy Reid has said that he's better than Brian Westbrook.
Wow.
And I don't disagree. As sacrilegious as that sounds, he is ultra explosive. His jump cut is it's outrageous. I mean, he can get from like front side B to backside B instantly. Like, it's insane how quick his feet are. And it's not even like if there's any running backs coaches in this chat, we're like, if you can stop and then get lateral and go from hole to hole without kind of sucking yourself even deeper into the blocks and getting caught in the trash, like if you can literally stop your forward momentum and then get lateral, like fully lateral from hole to hole, like that's a valuable skill set. He does that quicker than almost any other running back that I've seen in the last probably 5 or 6 classes. It's insane. Like him and Saquon have the same feet. Saquon's got better long speed, but I mean, in terms of everything else, Clyde's right there with Saquon. He really is. Like, he is special. And to get him at 32, it's robbery is what it is.
That is insane. And golly, you've got fans, man. Yeah, great question to follow up, Brett. Wow, best rookie coming out for running backs. And I completely agree with you, because I came up as a running back coach. And I've had one guy that can just do that from A to A, not B to B.
Yeah.
So that is something special. And do you think Reed is going to use him a ton on option routes out of the backfield or in the slot?
Absolutely. I mean, keep in mind, they basically ran the Saints offense at LSU last year.
Yeah, they did.
And he was doing both the Mark Ingram role and the Alvin Kamara role at the same time. And so as many option routes as you see Kamara run, the rail routes, eventually they'll put him in the slot. They ran F corner with him, that old Bill Walsh staple down in the red zone. Like they ran it with him because they could. And they beat Alabama for a touchdown right before halftime with that
Oh
play.
yeah, I freaking love that. I loved that play, and they
How
ran
many
that
running
like
backs do you see running corner routes out of the backfield?
none. And I promise you, after that play was over with, every coach that I know, we were like, yeah, we're putting that in. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter that we didn't have a player that can do that. We're like, screw that. We're putting that in.
But it's funny because that's been around since the 80s. But nobody runs it because how many running backs do you have that have that kind of ball skills to literally run F corner? You give a little nod to the safety, you work outside, and then you just hope that he can adjust to a back shoulder ball and without dropping it. Like there's not a lot of running backs that can do that,
No,
even especially at the high school level. But if you can find one, it is gold.
yeah, it is. I completely agree. Now diving into that, like, okay, we all know that Andy Reid's offense is amazing. Did you notice some offensive or defensive schemes that you think should get a lot more credit in the mainstream sports media than actually doesn't?
In the Chiefs specifically, I think it's notable how they can basically get into four verts anytime they want to out of any look. And a lot of their plays are just four verts with window dressing because they know they have Pat Mahomes.
Yeah.
And I love how they pressure safeties. Because if you're running four verts, everything turns into man coverage.
Yeah.
You got safeties one-on-one down the seam. And if you've got Tyreek Hill in the slot, and you know that if they're in quarters, that safety's taking number two, guess what? You got Tyreek Hill matched up on a safety one-on-one. And as long as you can survive long enough on a five-step drop, or sometimes Pat goes friggin' 14 yards deep in the pocket and runs around, like if you can run that concept and protect your quarterback, and he has the arm that can pay it off, there is no reason not to run four verts 8-9 times a game, which they do. They just do it from a lot of different looks. They'll run it off motion. It'll look like something else, and then next thing you know, it's like, oh, okay, we got four guys 20 yards down the field. It's the same freaking thing all the time, but they are so crafty with how they run that play out of every imaginable look. And because they have so much speed and because they have such a good quarterback, they get away with it. And I think that Andy kind of deserves more credit for morphing his offense from being very RPO centric, very quick game centric to damn near Air Coryell, in 1 year with Pat Mahomes just because he could.
Do you think I'm trying to think of another coach that has made like what Andy Reid started out in the West Coast offense, and then it seems like he's just totally revamped his offense almost every 3 years.
Yeah, I like to call it the spread coast because he's taken a lot of spread concepts and he's meshed them with some old school West Coast concepts. He's still got a lot of that kind of crafty West Coast screen game that you'll see.
Yes.
And
Oh my goodness,
Sean Payton does the same thing where, they're running double screens and all that kind of stuff. And he kind of melds that with a lot of the bubble game, the RPO game, and the vertical game that you see from modern spread teams. And it's honestly remarkable how well it all fits together. And you can see elements from these different systems all working together in concert, and how he sequences the play calls where he'll run a lot of different stuff out of the same formation, and then he'll kind of bait you and he'll kind of lull you into a false sense of security before he goes over the top. Like how he sequences his play calls out of that is just, I mean, it's a masterclass every single Sunday.
So I take it that's one of the teams that you were like, you know what, I don't care what happens. I'm going to watch them no matter what.
Every year and every week. It's them, it's New Orleans, it's Kyle over in San Francisco. Like those are the three offensive coaches that no matter what, I will sit down and watch their game every single week, whether it's day of or at some point during the week. I will watch them because that's how I catch the shield screen stuff, is where I'll see all three of them run it out of the same look over the course of like 9 weeks. And I'm like, okay, I'm not sure which one of them did it first, but they're definitely all watching each other. So I'm going to make sure to watch them too.
How do you not have just a video of each one, like you just alternating every 3 weeks between those three?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Like, how do you not make a video just on the Saints, on the Chiefs, on the 49ers, and then go back to the Saints, to the Chiefs, to the 49ers? Because they do so many interesting things.
Yeah, and even from week to week, it looks wildly different. I'd say the Saints are the most predictable out of the three at this point, or at least they were.
Why do you say
until mainly because a couple years ago they really lacked weapons. It was just Thomas and Kamara, and you can even see Drew. So one of my buddies, Andre Weregarden, he kind of pointed this out to me at the Senior Bowl of like 340 throws is the cutoff for Drew Brees before his arm starts to die at this point in his career. You get past 340 throws, their offense changes. And they became very predictable, especially concept-wise, because of where Drew's arm is at this point in his career. It's fresh early in the year. Well, I'll take 2019 out because there was a significant portion lost because of the injury. But before that, the year before that, you saw the offense change, and you saw how they became a lot more predictable concept-wise because of his arm, and because they really didn't have any receivers other than Thomas, who was their big slot, and because Kamara was basically their number 2 receiver by default. And so I did an episode actually that season about how to stop the Saints offense and what you're supposed to do, using the Cowboys as an example. And it kind of spelled out like, look, like these guys can only do one thing, especially late in the year when Drew's arm starts to die. So if you stop this one thing, you're fine. And I got a lot of hate for that at the time, but there's a reason why they started integrating Taysom Hill more often. It's because they knew that they could only do one thing. And they had to have that change up in there to be the kind of the third head of the dragon. That's why they were phasing Drew out. That's why they were bringing Taysom in, because the Cowboys exposed them in prime time of like, look, we are going to double Michael Thomas out of the slot. We're going to inside out bracket him, and we're putting our dime corner on Kamara in third down because he's the other guy, and we'll leave everybody else man coverage, no help, because you can't do anything. We know you're not going to throw deep. You're not throwing go balls down the boundary in December. Like, this is what you are. And it exposed them. It hurt them. And that is the whole reason they're paying Taysom Hill $10.5 million is because they can't do anything else late in the season. So those are the kind of episodes where it kind of differentiates the Saints from the Chiefs and from the 49ers for me, because they are more limited. That's just the reality of how it is. But at the same time, they have a coach in Sean Payton who knows that they're limited, and he's an excellent coach in terms of pulling out tricks exactly when he needs to make up for that. That's why they've been able to go deep into the playoffs for 3 straight years, is because they have a coach that knows how to coach around their own limitations roster-wise. And I love watching the Saints for that reason.
How did he figure out 343 passes before Breeze's arm just tanks?
I don't know what methodology he used, but I know he has access to a lot of data that I will never have access to. Like some advanced metrics, and obviously he watches a lot of tape too, but he told me, like, that's the number, 340. After 340, it's done. Like, that's when it is all quick game, it's screen game. They might take a couple shots, but it's not the same in September as it is in December. And again, they kind of work around it now. They're very much a ground and pound oriented team. We play defensive football. We have good special teams. Like, they're working around Drew's limitations as best they can. But the Saints know better than anybody. Like, they do have limitations, and they need Taysom, and they need all these kind of yards after catch threats to make up for it. Like, they have no other way to make up for it.
That's true. And I'm curious if the single wing, I'm sure you've read that article about Sean Payton when he was out that one year. He coached his kids' youth league, and he could stop every offense but the single wing. There was this one team that ran the single wing, and they could never stop it. And when he came back, I've noticed when Taysom Hill gets in there, it's kind of like a wildcat type package. Have you noticed what have you noticed with the blocking and the plays when he's in compared to different run plays that when Breeze is in?
It's numbers. Every defensive coach will tell you that the thing they hate most in the world is numbers. It's really hard to stop the run from a too high shell. And if you drop a guy down in there to give you +1 in the run game, guess what? If the quarterback's carrying the ball, you're back to being hat on hat. And that's the worst place you want to be as a defensive coach. Single wing makes every single run, at minimum, hat on hat, which means you need to rely on all 11 guys to beat blocks. And unfortunately, especially at the NFL level, that's just not a realistic proposition. So when you're down in the red zone and you got 5 yards to go, maybe if we got 20 yards to go, yeah, we can eventually get a tackle on there and bring them down. But if you only got 5 yards to stop a run hat on hat, good luck. That's why they have him in there, is because if you get numbers in the run game, there's not a whole lot you can do unless you have a severe talent advantage. It's a very sound principle by Peyton.
Yeah, I do like it. As much as I am a throwing kind of guy, I do like seeing when they bring him in and the different things that they do with him. I know you have to go. This was really short. We've been here for 30 minutes. I appreciate you being here.
I can do a couple more. Don't worry about it.
Okay, good. Because I wanted to know, who's your team on defense? Like what defensive scheme or philosophy do you kind of gravitate toward when you're doing these videos?
I really like watching what Mike Vrabel does in Tennessee. I don't know if there's many defensive coaches in here, but watch the Titans and how they use creeper pressures and all sorts of simulated blitzes where they're still bringing 4, but they make it look like they're bringing the house. And it's not quite the same as a zone blitz, but it's kind of in the same mold. But how they run creepers and how they're designed and how they kind of make a quarterback look one way, or how they kind of bait a quarterback into shifting a protection one way and then they bring heat from the other side, and how their DBs are coached to mask it, how their safeties are coached to mask it, how their linebackers kind of play around with depth, and every single little nuance for how their creeper pressures work is, I love it. I absolutely love watching that Titans defense. Are they the most talented group in the league? Absolutely not. But in terms of their third down pressure game, man, it is so fun to watch.
When did you notice that they were starting to do that and go, this is something a little bit different than what I'm used to seeing?
Really, once Vrabel got there. And it's funny because like Romeo Crennel does a lot of the same things in Houston. When they were both there together in Houston, they didn't do it as much. But then Vrabel left for Tennessee and he started running them all the time. And now Romeo also runs them all the time. So I don't know why they didn't do it together when they were coaching for my favorite team. But I think they're both really good teaching tape for coaches in terms of how to design and create pressure with 4 while making it look that you're bringing 5 and 6.
Yeah, I think that a lot of high school coaches should be doing that on defense because, I mean, it messes up an NFL quarterback.
High school kids have no shot.
Exactly.
They have no shot. I mean, if you just have pressure cut-ups from Tennessee, especially you look at the Browns game week 1 last year. I mean, they were making Baker's head spin. It was brutal. You get defensive coaches that look at that and they run those pressures against a high school quarterback, they will never score. They won't. They flat out won't.
So do you like seeing the same thing in college, like the Clemson system or the Michigan?
I love Venables because how he brings pressure, he almost identifies, okay, who's your weak link on the offensive line?
Yeah.
Okay, like if you have a bad left guard, but you got all conference guys at the other 4 spots, he's going to attack that left guard. And he's going to find ways to hit that left guard, whether we're bringing twists at him, whether we're showing mug looks so that you have to give us one-on-one and then we'll drop out. Like whatever he needs to do to punish that left guard, he's going to do it until you're protecting with 6 all game because you have to. And if he can take one receiver off the field and you're forced to block 4 with 6 all game long, that's a win for him. He'll take that all day. And I love that about him is he always attacks the weakest link. He doesn't try to go through the path of most resistance. He always goes through the path of least resistance. And that's a principle that a lot of defensive coaches can learn from.
Why do you think a lot of defensive coaches don't do that?
I think they get set in their ways. I think they have their idea of what should work. And sometimes they kind of outsmart themselves and they kind of overthink it rather than looking at who the most successful defensive coordinator in college football over the last decade, looking what he did and just adapting it. Like maybe they don't have the personnel that can run exactly what they do, but just look at the philosophy and the principles and then apply that to whatever you want to do. You know, you don't need to copy the system. Just take his mindset and apply that to your kids and it'll work. It's proven to work. And I think some coaches maybe just get a little bit too ingrained in what they want to do rather than what they need to do.
All right. So on that same train of thought, what is a coach that you've seen that you, when you started, because you've been doing this for a while, totally changed, and looking back on it, like that dude has changed for the better?
Oh, that's a good question.
Thank you.
Let me go here. let me look through my list of coaches so I don't forget anybody. Oh, actually, you know what? I know who. John Harbaugh.
Okay,
John Harbaugh. The Ravens will change what they are every year if they need to, based on what they need. I mean, you look at what the Ravens were under Joe Flacco, and then in the second half of the season of Lamar's rookie year, what they became, they're a different football team. Like, are the defensive philosophies similar? Are a lot of the run schemes similar? Yeah, I guess. But in terms of their mentality, how they call games, they became much, much more aggressive when Lamar came in. And they changed how they call football games. They changed their identity. They were not afraid to go for it on every fourth down just because they could, because they knew they're always going to have numbers in the run game with Lamar. You know, John comes from a special teams background, knowing that he has a kicker like Justin Tucker. He's willing to go for a 65-yard field goal instead of punting it and trying to do the whole coffin corner thing. Like he's a much more aggressive coach than he was earlier in his tenure. Even in his Super Bowl year, he's a more aggressive coach now than he was. And I think seeing his evolution into, honestly, just a crazy person out there. Watch if you can, watch the Ravens versus the Saints 2 years ago, where it's Sean Payton versus John Harbaugh, two coaches who do not give a damn. Like, they know their jobs are safe. They're going to be ultra aggressive because they can. They're not scared of anything. And it was in Baltimore, and that game was bonkers in terms of how many fourth downs that you saw both of them go for, the amount of pressures they were throwing. I mean, that was a game of haymakers, and it was ultra aggression from both teams. And I loved it. And seeing John kind of become a Sean Payton-ish type coach compared to what he was early in his career, where he's gonna try to win every game. He never coaches scared. He tries to win. I love that evolution from him, and it's part of the reason why I think the Ravens, no matter who they have on the field, are always going to be a good team because they have that kind of coach.
Do you think that a lot more coaches should go be more aggressive like him?
Yes, absolutely.
How much? Should they be further right than that, or just right up to Harbaugh, or a little bit? Like, what's your thoughts?
I mean, it's hard to be further right than Harbaugh is. I mean, obviously, you don't want to put yourself into a horrible situation. You don't want to be going for it on 4th and 9 from your own 30 midway through the first quarter. But if you have an opportunity to kick a team while they're down, do it. Don't let them get back up and punch you in the face. End the fight. End the fight. Anytime you get a chance, end the fight. I don't care if you're in the first drive of the game. It's 4th and goal on the 1 yard line. If you don't get it, who cares? They're on the 1 yard line. Bring a pressure the next play. Get a safety. End the fight. Worst thing you can do in a game like football is not throw a punch. Like this is not a fight for Mayweather. We are Conor McGregor. We are throwing punches. We don't get points for technical perfection here. Throw a punch.
I take it if it's 4th and 1 on the 1, you're not kicking a field goal. You're like, F it, I'm just going to go ahead and try to score.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's, and this maybe is pushing it, tie game late in the 4th quarter, if there's a minute and a half left and they have one timeout, if I'm in the same situation, I want the touchdown. I don't want to give them a minute and a half and a timeout to go get a field goal. No, I want to force them to drive the length of the field and get a touchdown to tie the game. I want points. And if I don't get it, whatever. If we can't get a yard, we deserve to lose anyway. Let's get the freaking touchdown, make them earn the victory over us. Don't just play scared and let them do it. Like, Again, you got to end the fight. Throw a punch when you get an opportunity.
I feel like you break down a lot of film and you see this a lot, and it just kind of pisses you off.
Oh my God, you have no idea. Anytime I see a coach play or coach scared against the New England Patriots, like you can tell when teams are terrified of them. And it infuriates me. Like the worst thing you can do is coach scared against the Patriots. Because guess what? If they knock you down, they're not going to let you get back up. If you get them on the ropes, you have to end it before they end you. Even now without Brady, you have to end them. Like that's what the Titans did. They jumped on them and then they just kept hitting them over and over and over again, and they won the game. You know, that's a philosophy I will always agree with. Aggression, aggression, aggression in all things. You have to be aggressive in this game. It's an aggressive sport by nature.
I completely agree with you, and you were speaking my language. Now with the Patriots, what do you think is going to happen there? Do you think it was all Belichick? Do you think it was all Brady, a mixture, or what do you foresee in this upcoming year between the two of them?
I think it was a 50-50 split um, because as great as Belichick is, Brady was a coach on the field, you know, in a lot of ways. And I honestly don't know what's going to happen in New England. A lot of it rests on if Jarrett Stidham is ready. I don't know if he is. Now, the Patriots seem confident, or at least they're putting out feelers that they're confident that he is, but we won't really know until they hit the field. And I think kind of both Tom's and Bill's legacies are yet to be written because we've never seen them apart. And so I'm very curious to see how Tampa does, and I'm very curious to see how New England does because I legitimately don't know at this point which one's going to be better off.
Who do you think has the better chance as a head coach, Tampa Bay or the Patriots with their quarterback situation?
I would probably say Tampa's going to be a better team.
And why do you say that?
A lot more weapons. It's that roster, the roster is better. You know, New England's defense is better than Tampa's. That's inarguable, but Tom has not had a receiving core like Mike Evans and Godwin and Howard and Brait and you know, all their running backs, and they've improved the offensive line when they drafted Wirfs, who, you know, I don't think he's going to be like an immediate Pro Bowler, but he's for damn sure an upgrade.
Yeah.
You know, he has not had this much talent around him since maybe 2011. Maybe, you know, when they were kind of revolutionizing the league with all the 12 personnel stuff they were doing with Gronk and Hernandez, and they still had a young Edelman, and I think Welker was there too at the time, and Amendola. They had a million slot receivers and a bunch of tight ends, but I mean, they were killing people. You know, he hasn't had that much talent around him in almost a decade. And I still think Tom's got another great year of quarterbacking left in the tank. And you give him that many weapons and a coach like Bruce Arians, I think Tampa's going to be a really tough out this year.
That's one of the teams I'm looking forward to seeing what they do whenever we can break this coronation going on.
Favorite word of the
day. You've done some breakdowns on. I know you said before we got on here with the draft and everything, you kind of just locked yourself up. I am more of a college guy than an NFL guy. Was there anything you saw breaking down players for the draft scheme wise coming out of college that you were like, that's interesting. I like that.
Lincoln Riley's run game is outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. Some of the stuff that they do down at OU in the run game, you know, the QB counters and the GT and all the stuff they do with Kyler and then Jalen Hurts. I mean, it's mind-bending stuff. I really hope the Ravens don't run any of it because they would break the league if they got Lamar loose on some of these concepts. It's like we always like to attribute Lincoln Riley as a quarterback whisperer, but he is a phenomenal designer of run schemes. He's amazing.
For me, his change in college from what he was at ECU and, you know, under Mike Leach to what he's doing now, it's almost like night and day.
Oh, they're not even the same coach anymore. It's crazy.
I agree. Now, do you think Riley's going to make the jump to the NFL? And if he does, do you think he can be successful?
I think he might have taken the Cowboys job. Maybe. Other than that, I don't think there's any job he would have taken. It's
Why is that?
possible. It's possible. I mean, remotely possible that he might go to Houston if and when Bill O'Brien's fired. But I don't think
would you be happy about that?
Oh, absolutely. Like my wish list is Eric Bieniemy and then Lincoln Riley are the two that I'd want the most. And then maybe like Louis Riddick as GM because I really want an actual general manager again. But I think other than the Cowboys, I don't really know of any other job that Riley would take, A, that could afford him, or B, that would give him the kind of quality of life he'd want. I mean, he is the king of Norman, Oklahoma, and he will be for the next 10 years. He has unbelievable job security. He can get any quarterback in the nation he wants, whether transfer or freshman. Like he's got it made there. And I think it would take a lot of money to pry him out of the situation. And Jerry Jones would probably be the only owner willing to pay him that much money.
Just give him his yacht that he was on the draft before.
Yeah, give him a stake in ownership. I mean, that legit might be what it takes.
So let's, Riley, no. What were your thoughts when Kingsbury came up?
I actually liked the Kingsbury hire.
And why is that?
Because I knew that this guy knows how to put up points. And he never really had a chance at Texas Tech because Texas Tech doesn't recruit defense, which I know people say like, oh, that was part of his job was to recruit defense. Even if he did, like what 5-star defensive players are you getting at Texas Tech? You know, if you're a 5-star in the state of Texas on defense, you're not going to Tech. You're going to A&M. You're going to Bama. You're going to Georgia. Like he had no realistic shot of recruiting the kind of defensive talent you need to survive in that conference. He could put up points with the rest of them, but OU is always going to recruit better defensive players because they're OU. Texas is always going to recruit better defensive players because they're Texas. Like it would take a lot of luck for him to have gotten a fair shake in that conference. Whereas now in the pros, you know, there's no recruitment about it. If he wants a guy, he's going to draft, Isaiah Simmons. He's going to draft Leki Fotu. Like he's going to get whatever defensive players he wants because it's an even playing field in the NFL. And guess what? He doesn't have to coach the defense.
Yeah.
He's got a defensive coordinator for that. So he can focus on the offense, which is what he does best. With an outstanding young quarterback in Kyler Murray, they're going to put up 1 million points because they will. And the defense, even if they're just average, I think they're going to be a good team. So I think, honestly, he'll be a better, quote unquote, better pro coach because it's a more even playing field for him. And Texas Tech should not have fired him. He was the best thing they were going to get. And I think they're going to figure that out in a few years.
I completely agree. Now, do you think bringing Hopkins in is going to make that offense even more explosive? How do you think? What are your thoughts on how they're going to use him and with Fitzgerald?
I mean, their red zone package is going to be insane. They're going to be really hard to get off the field on third down, and I mean really, really hard. I think Kyler throws one of the best fade balls in the NFL already, even only being 1 year in the league. He's one of the best fade throwers in the game. And now you're pairing him up with Hopkins, who's arguably the best receiver at jump balls in the league. And Larry Fitzgerald is also very good at jump balls. Like, it's a match made in heaven. It really is. I think their offense is going to be disgusting.
And what gets me, I'm sure you've seen this stat, Fitzgerald has more tackles in his career than drop passes. I think it's like 36 tackles to 26 drop passes.
And for a guy who's played as long as him, I mean, that's
incredible. And then
it's unbelievable.
Hopkins, who last year or 2 years ago didn't have a drop ball at all,
with like 110 catches.
Yes,
it was insane. Like, and Kyler's such an accurate quarterback in general. Like, they're going to be really, really hard to stop.
And there's something about the way Kyler throws the ball that I just like.
It's very catchable.
It is.
Like it's pretty. It's
thank you. That's what
spiral.
Yes, it is. It is pretty. It is a pretty ball.
It's one of those things where like you look at the slow motion on NFL films and the ball, like there's no wobble. It looks fake. Like,
it does.
How does he get that much spin on the dance? It's like he's throwing a breaking ball. Like, it's crazy.
It's like straight from Madden.
Yeah.
uh, okay, going back to the draft, that was offensively. Was there anything that caught your eye breaking down defensive players?
Well, Chase Young is the best edge rusher I've ever evaluated for starters.
Really?
I think he
Everybody.
is. I think he's Bosa brother technique and a Myles Garrett body,
Oh, wow.
which I know sounds terrifying, and he is. He's absolutely terrifying. And his battles against Andrew Thomas next year are going to be. I can't wait because Andrew Thomas is a tremendous pass protector. Let's see, who else do we have in this defensive class? I mean, the safeties was deep. I love Delpit at free safety. We had a whole bunch of bangers that were kind of like hybrid safety linebackers, like Jeremy Chin. The linebacker class, I think, was sneakily deep. You had the talent at the top, like Patrick Queen and all of them. But I think Logan Wilson's a tremendous player. I think Davis Gaither, who's also a Bengal, I think was a really kind of interesting hybrid safety linebacker, probably mostly like overhang apex type guy who's going to be playing. I guess you'll call it Will in that system, but he'll probably be bumped out most of the time. At least that's how I would use him personally. But yeah, man, there's at every single position in this class, there's a lot of really intriguing, really, really good players.
So who do you think was the steal in the draft?
Ooh, man.
All rounds. Like when
All
that
rounds.
all rounds. I'm gonna put you on the spot because you're the expert.
Parnell Motley. He
Now,
went
why do you say that?
undrafted. So he went undrafted to the Bucks. And the reason why he went undrafted, he wasn't invited to the combine, which was a travesty in and of itself. You look at the great receivers in that conference that he went against. Jalen Reagor got almost nothing against him. Denzel Mims got almost nothing against him. CeeDee Lamb in practice, I've seen some practice footage of them. And, I mean, he's a dog against CeeDee. Ultra physical, not the greatest deep speed, but in terms of just pure press corner that can really frustrate you at the line, force you out of the bounds or out of bounds into the boundary. I mean, he's almost like he's not Richard Sherman, but he plays like Richard Sherman in terms of just ultra physical press corner, that kind of style. But he didn't go to the combine again for whatever reason. I have no idea. And then because he didn't go to the combine and then this virus thing happened, nobody could work him out. Nobody could do a medical recheck. And if you don't have medical information, regardless of how healthy you are, you're not going to be drafted. So the Bucks got him for nothing, a corner that probably should have gone I would say around the 4th round or so. They got a quality 4th round corner. I think he's one of the 10 or 12 best corners in this class that very easily could start by the end of his rookie year for literally nothing. That to me is a steal. If you're getting a starting corner for no draft capital at all and you're paying him no money, that's insane.
All right, now let's flip that. Let's go top 15. Which one do you think that got drafted in the top 15 will turn out to be a bust? Or that when you're breaking them down, you're like, I really don't see what people see in this guy.
Ooh, let me go through the top 15 here. Burrow, he's easy. Young, he's easy. Okuda, love him. Andrew Thomas wasn't my highest graded tackle. I had him at OT3, but it wasn't a terrible value. Like I get why they took him at 4. Tua, love him. Oh, Herbert. Okay, yeah, that's the one.
Why do you say that?
He was the 4th best quarterback in this class, and that's being generous. And you took him at 6th overall. Really? Like, this is a guy who he's a 4-year starter who never got better. Like, he kind of plateaued and stayed at the same spot for 4 years.
Yeah, he did.
And I know people say, like, oh, well, his receiving core at Oregon was hurt for the 6 to 7 weeks. Like, okay, even if he had Joe Burrow's receiving core, like, this is a dude who was reading smash snag against cover 2, a route concept that is literally designed to beat cover 2. And he threw an interception because he threw the snag despite the corner sinking, and he literally had the flat. It was 1st down, and he threw an interception on smash snag against cover 2. There's going to be some offensive coaches in this chat right now that have hands in faces because that shouldn't be possible for a 4-year starter. It should not be possible to throw that dumb of a pick. And he did that like every game. He had 3 or 4 throws every game that were inexplicably bad, whether it was a bad read, bad accuracy, like bad anything. And I can't justify taking that kind of player in the top 6 picks in the draft to be my franchise quarterback. I just can't. Like, does he have tools? Sure. Lots of quarterbacks have tools. Did he get better? No. If he didn't get better in 4 years at one of the premier programs in the country, why is he suddenly going to get better in the NFL? Like, what are we doing here? I don't understand that pick.
That is true. All right, I'm gonna run somebody. I have a buddy of mine, or an acquaintance, a coach that I've talked to. He's in a major P5 school, and he said the worst pick of the draft was Joe Burrow. And his reason was because if you look at where he was at, like what he's done in his career, he only had one good year. And in that year, in the offense, LSU's offense, they only ran about 5 plays. And everywhere else.
I wouldn't agree with that.
Okay, so let me know. Why would you say that?
I mean, maybe he was being a little bit hyperbolic in terms of they only ran 5 plays. Like, it was a watered down version of the Saints offense, but they still had a lot of different concepts in there. You know, you would see Dragon, you'd see Dagger. I mean, I guess they threw a lot of screens, but nowhere near as many as Oregon.
His whole thing was it was like a very quarterback friendly type of system that was watered down, like you said. And he doesn't see that going on in the NFL because he also coached a lot of NFL quarterbacks, and he knows how difficult systems can be. And I personally, I was like, wow, I never thought about that. And I'm going to ask you, because you probably break down more film than he does, and he's at a Power 5 school. Why do you think that assessment is wrong?
I mean, we've seen a lot of quarterbacks these days that, for whatever reason, the light comes on for their last year, or maybe they just didn't get an opportunity to play till their last year. I mean, look at Kyler Murray. He was transferred just like Burrow.
Yeah.
Who lit it up in his last year, became first overall pick, and was spectacular as a rookie. So I don't really hold, maybe like in the old school way of thinking where quarterbacks developed slower than they do nowadays, because honestly, quarterback development has rapidly increased with this young generation. I mean, kids are going to camps when they're 9.
They have virtual reality now.
Yeah, young quarterbacks are just better now. And I think in the old days where, yeah, it might take 3 or 4 years of playing experience to get a kid ready for the NFL, you'd be a little bit concerned if they only had one good year. But these days, I would argue, again, because the development is so rapid, at least having that good year and showing that development and showing that capacity to improve, I think is a plus. And plus, you heard Burrow himself say, look, in 2018, you know, we were running a lot of 12, we were running a lot of 21, we had 2 and 3 guys out in the route, and that was it. We were running mostly play action. Like, it was a very old school type system. Like, I'm much more comfortable if we've got 4 and 5 guys running routes and we're in empty and I get to just be a point guard and see space and attack space. Like, LSU finally catered to that strength of his.
It was about time too.
Yeah, and he had the most prolific passing season of all time. So I think it's easy to say, oh, we only had one good year, without actually looking at the reasons why he had one good year and ignoring all the other quarterbacks that had that quote unquote 1 year, but then still did really well in the NFL. Like, I think 20 years ago, yeah, that'd be a valid complaint. These days, I think it's irrelevant.
Do you think they're going to run a similar offense with the Bengals to cater to his style?
They absolutely should. I think you want to run. I mean, again, Zach Taylor comes from that kind of Shanahanian West Coast kind of system background. I think you really want to lean into the whole spread coast movement where, yeah, you've got some West Coast concepts, you sprinkle in some spread concepts, you run both of them out of the same formation, you keep defenses guessing. Like, I mean, Andy does that in KC.
Yeah.
Like, why can't the Bengals do that? Like, Pat was a spread quarterback. It was the same kind of thing. He thrives in empty. They let him play in empty. And so I think you do the same thing with Burrow. Like, if you're not calling your offense to the strength of your quarterback, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, you are. So what draft pick or draft player, and let's say, again, top 15, are you most excited about watching? And let's take out Chase Young because you already talked about how you're excited about that.
That's a good question.
Got 2 of them, baby. Yes.
Probably McKie Becton. I love him. I think a lot of people kind of unfairly criticize him for quote unquote not having a lot of pass pro reps. They say, oh, he only had 73 true pass pro reps, and he's still allowed a pressure like once every 7 snaps, which is so and so bad or whatever. Like, I get that, but at the same time, the reason why he had so few pass pro reps is because in that system, like, it was mostly play action. And I think with the Jets, it's going to be the same kind of thing. Like, a lot of his quote unquote pass pro is going to be off play action. So he's not going to be as exposed in true pass pro reps as people think he will. So I think at the end of the day, he was still only allowing 1 pressure a game. 1 pressure is 1 pressure. Like, regardless, and he's such a dominating run blocker. His technique wasn't that bad. Like, we're not talking about a Greg Robinson situation here. Like, he knows what he's doing. He just has to get better at it. And he's working with Duke Manyweather, who's probably the premier offensive line trainer for guys like Mitchell Schwartz, Lane Johnson, Trent Brown, all these Pro Bowl and all pro tackles. And as soon as McKie left Louisville, he went to go work with him. So his technique, like, today, as I'm talking to you, is already better than it was his last year at Louisville by virtue of working with Duke this offseason. So I think I take that guy who's going to be protected to the Jet system anyway, who already has better technique, who's a dominating run blocker. I mean, absolutely crushes the souls of people. Like, he's going to be good. Will he be as good as Jedrick Wills? Probably not, like, as a rookie. But long-term, yeah, he's probably going to be a Pro Bowl left tackle, which if you're getting that at the 11th overall pick without having to trade up, that's a great pick.
You just made so many offensive line coaches ecstatic, and you're going to make them go to bed with a smile on their face because out of everybody in the draft, the top 15, you picked out an OL-man. High fives, man.
A damn good one at that, too.
Yes, high fives. All right, now, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to let you go because I know you have something else to do. We've been talking for over an hour now. And unless you want to keep going, because I could talk to you all day.
I know. I do got to get back for my in-laws. I know.
Yeah, I don't want
to. Got a little party. We're celebrating
trouble.
We're celebrating my father-in-law for chat. They don't know. My father-in-law, he had a quintuple bypass. Yeah, kind of at the beginning of this whole pandemic when it started, and it was a pretty hairy situation. So we're kind of celebrating him recovering and doing really well now. So
that's great. And again, thank you for coming on and talking ball. Coaches in chat, and I'm gonna put this in the description when it's over with. Here is all of Brett's stuff: his Twitter, his Patreon, which I'm gonna drop that first. Actually, that's the only thing I'm gonna drop because y'all need to join it, man, because it is unbelievable. I joined it. I love all the stuff you put out. Thank you so much for being here. It really meant a lot to me, as corny
Absolutely,
as that sounds.
Man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and until next time, coaches, let's continue to mash the spread, score points, and have fun.